even. You're not even involved
It's
in
not
any of
like
this.
on craft work. Go.
Kraftwerk, they were a good band. Right,
We
talking
moved-
about craft.
We've moved
Were you
on
ever
from the
into
Phoenicians, haven't we?
Were you ever into Kraftwerk, the band from the 70s, Drina?
No, thank you. No.
Bet she was. Bet
No,
she
no,
was.
no, not me.
She was.
Trendy raver.
Well, talking about trendy ravers, any news from you, Drina?
No. Oh, well, my son told me they dug up a Roman road in Manchester.
Oh,
But I don't know how
Why did you
recent.
tell me this?
I don't know how recent that is. I haven't read about it yet.
All right, well, find out more.
Be in the news. Yeah.
Yeah, be in the news, right? Okay, well done, Drina. You've made a contribution this week. You can go home now. Right, right. Rog, I'm not going to be harsh, Rog, but say something.
Something.
That's it, Rog. What? Hang on, Rog. The grass has just grown below my feet. I'm just moving on to David. Anything you want to say, David?
No, thank you.
Good. Andy, don't mind me, Andy. We got all day. We'll just wait you. Yeah, it's fine. Right, Margaret.
archaeologists have announced the discovery of an ancient city in Peru's northern Barranca province. 3,500-year-old city named Penico is believed to
Hang on a minute. That's really significant, and you're keeping this to the last minute.
Well, I'm telling you now. Oh, I've lost it now.
Yeah, it's nice.
Penico.
That is really significant stuff. Something that age there.
Yeah, 3,500-year-old city, and there's a photograph of it.
Good.
It was a key trading hub connecting early Pacific coast communities with those living in the Andes Mountains and Amazon Basin, 200 kilometers north of Lima. And it's about 600 meters above sea level, founded between 1800 and 1500 BC, around the same time the early civilizations were flourishing in the Middle East and Asia.
Well, that's significant. That is significant.
Oh, it's about America's oldest civilization, who are called the Caral, who I've never heard of, Caral.
Nor have I.
No.
All right.
Well, they're America's oldest civilization, apparently.
Went for the name of my roof.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
so that's that.
Fair enough. Right, well done. Thanks for that. That's 2 bits of news. Right, we're going to get straight into it. Andy's just turned up, so I'm going to tell you the list of things we're doing tonight, right? And also, I got to play around in the woods. I'm doing my regression to become an Iron Age Roman person via sitting around the fire talking about it, and then eventually I'm going to have bits of costume on, but that's something else. So we're going to be looking at Empúries a little bit tonight, that city that Andy talked about, some images from that. We'll be talking about a find that was made in over the border, well, for me anyway. Some really interesting Roman stuff, Iron Age stuff. We've got, I want to mention that that Carthaginian explorer known as Hanno, so that'll be good. We'll be looking at Pythias and his journeys, right? We'll be looking a little bit about Roman historians, a tiny bit, because I'm still trying to put this together. So we'll look at Agricola, and we'll look at Tacitus, one of the Tacituses. And hopefully we'll probably have a little bit more stuff that we can do as well. So that's good. So if Andy's hasn't got anything else to say other than eating his dinner, so my last week was I went to the Slayer concert, and Anthrax was there, and Amon Amarth, which might not mean anything to anyone. I did some film work last week, which was really interesting. Where was
that?
Well, you know I can't say. You know I can't say what it was. It's somewhere in Wales. Okay, that'll do.
Wales,
right.
Oh.
That'll do. That's all I'm allowed to say. And and I've been really chugging along with a book I'm writing with Richard about Barry. It's almost as I'm like doing loads of stuff with it all the time. So I'm really getting on with that. So anyway, let's get on with the images. So I want to be finished about 20 past tonight, so you'll have had two long hours, guys, off me. You know, and I know David wants to go to the pub and have a meal, so that'll be fine. Right, okay. Look at some nice images to start off with. So these are the images tonight. Not a massive number, but it's a few to get going, right? So this is the place that I do believe Andy went to, right? Really nice image. And this was the place that he mentioned that there was Phoenician, Carthaginian, and Roman archaeology all in the same area. And if this is familiar to Andy, then brilliant. So where it is there it is, and it's way over there near the Pyrenees. Or maybe I've got the name completely wrong. It's in Catalonia. If this is not the same place, then but it is a site.
It is.
It is, Andy, yeah?
Yeah, that's the one. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Good. I've done something right, Andy. Right, so today is all about sort of trying to get more to grips with this sort of essence of movement, getting to grip with Greeks, Romans, Carthaginians, Phoenicians, Britons, Africans, Europeans, journeying, and all these other things. So this is all coming together with a nice little bit of news from that has come to me as well. So we got a nice little bit of news this week as well. So some stories in the press. So that's that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if we there it is, and if we go to see some images here, aerial view, and nice little bit of a street, nice little bit of harbourage. That wall has to be something to do with this settlement. It's got to be, because it's there. It's sort of in the middle of nowhere. So again, this sort of thing, this idea of movement, trying to get into your brains about the fact that it's not always about the likes of Rome coming over to Britain, invading, conquering a country. It's not all about that. It's not all about warfare. And that makes me think about something really, really important when we think about Hanno and Pythias, and we think about the Carthaginians and the Phoenicians and Greek colonies and Egyptian colonies and so on. We're thinking these are trading people, so these are bits of trading people. They're setting up a colony, and it's that idea not of conquest, it's that idea of sort of giving these people a sense of you, right? And this is what the Carthaginian explorer was doing. Hanno, he was going out there, giving a little bit of the Carthaginian world to the world, giving a bit of Carthage to the world, right? And again, this place Imperi's up near the Pyrenees. We're looking at sort of Carthaginian, Greek foundation. We're talking about the likes of this being a Carthaginian city properly by 218 years BC, and then then it was occupied by the Romans. This is the military side of things, but why this place existed. And again, it's in a really interesting position by Balearics. It's sort of where it's not too far away from another locality, that Marseille, which is another one of those sort of colonies moving around. And we can't really fix these places in history. Who founded this? Who founded that? Who did that? Because if it's a trading post, then nobody really has the glory. So Empúries was founded on actually a small island at the mouth of a river known as Fluvia, and this itself again had another name which may have existed. This is a name before known as Palopolis, which may have meant a name given to the landscape by the Greeks, which actually meant back then Pelopolis actually meant old city. It meant old city. The place name was known as the Old City in 550 years BC. So it must have been there for a while. Pelopolis, paleo means old, as in Paleolithic, Paleopolis. And then what they did is after 550 years BC, this place, Impuries, became Neopolis, which means the new city or the new place. So there's also there's also this thing this really sort of comes into a piece of odd history, right? Where what's going on is there's a bit of cause and effect, and the cause and effect is quite interesting because the Greeks decided to create something here. And why were the Greeks going around the Mediterranean? They were going around the Mediterranean for a slightly different reason than what the Phoenicians were doing. They were going around the Mediterranean because the Persian king Cyrus II in the 530s had conquered some of the Greek cities in Anatolia. So the Greeks decided to get on their ships and they decided to find somewhere in the Mediterranean, create a town, create a place to live, or go into a place that there's a little village there, Pelopolis. And the Greeks basically said, look, we're gonna create something bigger here. This is what we're going to do. So there's other reasons why people are moving around. It's not just due to warfare. It's not just to do with trade with the Phoenicians. It's not to do with warfare with the Romans and the Carthaginians. There's other reasons why people are moving around. And I think that's really important to master that and remind that there's other reasons why things are happening. So we're moving on from this. But I think the reason why we wanted to mention this was because it's the remains of a Carthaginian city, and there's not many of them. And they actually issued their own coins as well, Epirus coins, which I haven't actually got an image of, but they had coins associated with the city, the locality. And the Greeks were a bit like the Phoenicians. They would set up something and they would be independent from everybody else, and the Phoenicians would be independent from everybody else. But the Romans had to spoil it. Again, these images, thanks to Andy, and we put this out there. So what we're going to do, we're going to go on to something that's so in our faces now, which is about Britain. Again, we're still in this locality. Just the last image of it, Puries, and this is where we're going to go now. So this guy reminds me, and Roger, who does this remind you of, Roger? Well done. It reminds you of Stephen Clark from Monmouth. Well done, Roger. I knew you'd say that. But I thought this was absolutely brilliant. This was in the news. This was in the news on the 4th of July. 4th of July. This was released on the 4th of July. And I just thought some really nice images, including a gorgeous looking woman with red hair in a trench. And so this site itself is full of artifacts like swords, bits of archaeology, bits of, look at that wonderful painted remains of a Roman villa, fresco from a wall, some nice colors there. So it's a nice archaeological excavation. And this is a nice archaeological excavation bringing the world of the Iron Age and the Roman world together where it should be, right? I just want to mention something that I mentioned earlier on in passing. One of the reasons why I wanted to finish early today, at a reasonable time, was I wanted to go in a little bit of a woodland. I wanted to set up a few stones, right? And I wanted to start my Iron Age Roman journey, which is quite appropriate because the headlines for this find on the BBC are Iron Age settlement and Roman villa and earth. And my Roman journey my Roman Iron Age journey is that I'm going to start to get bits of Roman Iron Age type costume and a staff and boots, and I'm going to see how I cope with that, wandering around woodlands and fields and sort of get an experience of the stuff I'm teaching you. So I can say, actually, that historian is wrong because you wouldn't do it that way. So I want to really get into this. So if we're going to do the Romans properly, I may as well actually try to be one myself. Right. So this is really good that we're looking at this. And again, what you've got is an extensive settlement established more than 2,000 years ago, including possible evidence of a Roman villa has been discovered during excavation. So an extensive Iron Age settlement established more than 2,000 years ago. And it's very rare that they've actually found evidence of these swords. One is probably a Roman era sword, and the other one's Iron Age, right? So this is really interesting. The site that they've been excavating is near Willesey, which is in Gloucestershire. And the excavation follows the discovery of two iron Roman cavalry swords. And I do believe, from what I've been reading, I'm not exactly sure that they're both Iron Age or Roman. So one's Roman, one's Iron Age. I haven't really gone into this as deeply as I should have. So the cavalry sword, which I do believe is probably definitely the one on the right. Maybe they both are, whatever. But there was some talk that one of these was an Iron Age sword. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Well, this from that period that we're talking about, Iron Age, Roman era. We're talking about after the birth of Christ. We're talking into the 40s, 50s AD. It's very rare to come across a sword. You might get a pommel. That's the end bit of a sword. That's where the grip would be. Would be in wood, but the pommel survived. And usually a cavalry sword was a lot longer than normal infantry sword, because a cavalry sword, somebody on a horse, right? Usually a cavalry sword is slightly over 18 inches long. A gladius, which is a Roman infantry sword, is shorter than 18 inches long. So I thought I'd put that in there. But again, finding something like this, finding these types of objects is extremely important to give you an idea of a world that we don't usually talk about. But just because you find swords, it doesn't mean to say that everybody's just going around fighting each other. And as a sword is lost, that's rather interesting as well. So this Ian Barnes, that's who the archaeologist is there. Senior archaeologist, he says, eminent archaeologist Andy, valuable he can't be an eminent like me, but I'll give it to him. Valuable insights into the nature of settlement patterns from the early Iron Age through to the Roman period in Gloucestershire. And that's a pommel end there. And again, it's bronze. Really, really nice. It's still there. It's still on the iron. It's still on the sword. We know it's part of that. Probably cavalry orientated. Andy.
Just going back to the other picture, if you look at the right-hand end of the swords, they're tapered as to where the handle would be. So that there may well be this like a scabbard end, those things, not because I thought they were pommels, but there's no shape. You see what I mean?
Yeah, the scabbard ends.
Yeah.
They're not pommels.
It's a bit deceiving, that picture, isn't it?
Yeah, they're not pommels
Yes.
at all.
No.
They're scabbard ends. You are right, Andy. You're completely correct. They're scabbard ends. Look at the image, you can see it.
Currency bars, are they?
Well, when I was looking at this image, obviously when something comes out like this, you don't have time to analyze it, and maybe I should do a little bit more. But there you go. Andy's right. So basically, they look like scabbard.
Yeah, but the written stuff was talking about pommels as well, wasn't it? So it is a bit misleading. So
Yeah. So obviously, immediately I've gone into saying what I'm not seeing when I was looking at that and thinking.
He's making it up as he goes along.
He's making it up as he goes on. I'm glad you corrected me on that. It's really important that you did that. I'm really happy that you did that. But the fact of the matter is, really interesting bits of archaeology here. And again, this is the problem when you've got press articles. I remember reading one piece that said actually these were Iron Age swords, right? So and I'm looking and thinking, right, what I'm going to do today, I'm going to say that one is Iron Age and the other one's Roman, and then I've made the balls up with the fact that those are not pommels. That you are right, they're scabbard ends. It's fine. It's good to be wrong. It really is.
But they don't look Roman, do they? That doesn't look Roman. That looks Iron Age.
And this is what was going in my head. This is what was going in my head. I'm trying to. The problem is when you've got this stuff and you're just trying to work through it, and you're looking and you're seeing things wrong with the images. That's where it really gets interesting. They're saying, speaking on the finds, the sword, the metal detecting enthusiast who actually found the original swords that led to the site, right? It said that this was only my second time metal detecting, and the morning before the rally, I had a feeling I would find something special. And you know what, Andy? He'll never find anything again in his entire life. I'm finding that with metal detecting enthusiasts.
What would a Roman one look like? Would it have more of a handle on it?
Oh, come on, let's do a bit of Roman. Just get straight off there.
More than that, then.
Let's do a bit of analysis. Come on, let's do it. So,
Wow. Oh,
wow,
You don't
let's whack
see
it.
many cavalry swords either from the Roman period either, do you? So
Roman
different, were
Ala,
they?
which Ala is the name for cavalry. Ala, cavalry. There we go. Ala sword. So if we type in there, it's slightly longer than a gladius, and so we can rip this article apart, can't we? So there we go.
The different usage, more of a slashing thing than a piercing.
Yeah, Andy, that's nothing like what we've just been seeing.
No.
it kind of is, because it's got a long, straight, thin blade.
Yeah, but
it's very pointy, isn't it?
Pointy. Yeah.
But the scabbard end,
narrower.
the scabbard end is
nothing
not
like it.
Yeah, it's nothing like it.
I'd go with
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But of course, they don't all have to be like that. That could be 200 years later, of course.
They
That
don't.
looks very sophisticated.
Can you see where I jumped to the pommel and I just went with my
absolutely,
notes? Yeah. But I'm glad you said that. Because so basically what it is that
hang on, go down
there
again.
Middle.
One in the middle. Go down next row.
Down again.
That red one. Look at that one.
Oh, that's more like it there.
Yeah.
Oh, gone again. There.
That one.
Hey.
Now that's
It was more like that.
Yeah, but that's
made up.
It's
not a real one. Everything else,
it's not a real one. So in other words, the cavalry sword, it which is known as a Sparta. So there we go. So it's this sword with its longer blade. So that is approximately so we got 6. Yeah, because you can see that's over 18 inches long, right? So yes, because the gladius is under 18 inches long. Anyway,
realise they had different ones for mounted combat, but that makes sense.
Well, when you're on a horse, you've got to have a bigger dangler to hit people on the ground.
Yeah,
and they've all got that pointy bit on for poking as well.
Ooh.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
You can imagine it, can you? He's a very naughty boy, so you're poking him on the ground. You naughty boy! Right, yeah. Do you know, I wish I hadn't started this now. I really don't.
That's great.
No, it's interesting. It's good.
It's great. Yeah, the thing is, when you make mistakes, you discuss it, and it's so good. I love it when that happens.
Different types of sword, though, it seems. I don't know.
What's that, Rog?
They're different types, the shape of them.
They are.
Yeah.
It can even be ceremonial. If it's ceremonial, well, you've got a different case again, haven't you?
We should do more about weaponry and the differences, shouldn't we?
Get your weapon out! Yeah, we will do. We're gonna be doing loads about weapons. It's just that
very thin.
there's just so much to do. There really is. So they're really excited that they've got this, and they're excavating. They're excavating away. Excavations found evidence of settlements spanning several centuries, including 3, possibly 4 Iron Age ring ditches measuring up to 18.5 meters. So these would be associated with settlements, buildings that would be within them, and some really interesting stuff that we've actually got is this again. This is something that really sparks my boat, because this is really good examples of frescoes from a Roman type villa. And what when can you remember when we did that article? Did I show you? We looked at that mosaic and And they found all those mosaics in London and from about 20 different rooms. And I said that the smaller bits of the mosaic, not the mosaic, start again, right? Calm down. So remember that site in London, on the South Bank, in Southwark, the Liberty site. It's all come to me now. The Liberty site in Southwark, right? They found the remains of 20 sets of frescoes from 20 odd rooms, and what they were saying was that the archaeologists said the little bits of fresco are from the higher up, and the bigger bits of fresco are from the bottom, right? So you can see there that that's an indication that these bits of fresco are probably from lower down, in the villa fresco arrangement, right, rather than higher up. So that's really interesting. And you've got some really nice band in there, some really nice color, and also this is near Corinium, and Corinium, Cirencester, is the place that they've got lots of craftsmen operating. So that's really, really important. And then what you then got is this, right? So these were actually found associated with the remains of the cavalry swords, right? And basically, what you've got the remains of a copper ball. All of these bits apparently are to do with the remains of a copper ball. And I've got the honor of going to Corinium. And when I was doing some stuff for the university, they just said they left me in a room with cups of tea, and I was going through all the artifacts, and it was brilliant. So that's the Corinium Museum. So what, obviously remains like this, copper remains, and there they are. Oh, there's now, there we go. We've got a little bit more of that. So the detectives who found the swords said that he had a feeling. So there we go. That's a lot more clearer, right? But that is a lot, doesn't look Roman to me. It really doesn't. Right. It doesn't look like the right thing. In fact, that design there is specific to you might get actually bronze mirrors, like the birdlit mirror that has actually got that design on the back, right? That is not a Roman design, right? But anyway, so there they are excavating. He's defining that the color changes indicate a building. Oh my God, Andy, look at that! It's a high vis bobble hat. Oh my God!
I've not seen one of them. No.
Oh, gotta have one of those.
Andy, I'm gonna take a note of this. We're gonna have high vis bobble hats. I have just written that down. Do you know what? I would never lose Michelle again. She goes out in the field and she's got this high vis bobble hat. I'm loving it. And there's an orange one there. Again, so look at that, and it just to end on this. So they've done meticulous work there: Roman building material, ceramic roofing, box flue tiles for the hypercourse system, the heating of the rooms, painted plaster, all this stuff dug up. And this new evidence will help us to understand more about what happened around the period of the Roman conquest, which must have been a tumultuous time. That's their own opinion. Right, so what we're going to do, we're going to move on to... Oh, just have one more look at that. Yeah, there we go. Oh. We're going to move on to the next bit. We've already done 2 bits. Oh, this ain't going well. Well, it is going well. So this is the thing. So what we've got, we've got, amazingly enough, right? I got to be honest with you, right? I had no idea this guy existed, right? But if you'd have looked at the right history books, Hanno is one of those people, one of those explorers that was absolutely massive, right? Except I'd never heard of him, right? And that is an illustrative book from obviously a book that I didn't have as a child, and that's Hanno the Explorer. There's also a general called Hanno, right? Not to get the two mixed up. And there they go. They're out and about, Oh, and also a nice bit of use of purple there. Oh, and there's a monkey with a club. So this must be
Really?
Victorian. However, right, that is our Hanno.
Was he
So what would
Carthaginian?
yeah, he's a
He was.
Carthaginian explorer.
All
He's
right.
we're gonna
Okay.
so what we're gonna do, right? I'm gonna he was a Carthaginian explorer, right? You can what I've got two bits of stuff here. I've actually just chucked I've actually chucked on my screen the bit about from Wikipedia, but my source here is completely different. So Hanno is believed to have been born roughly sometime around in the 500 years BC, right? Late 500 years BC, like 500 years BC, and then he died sometime in the 400 years BC. So we've got so if we want to rough this guy out, he's roughly around 450 years BC. So this was a Carthaginian explorer, right? And he explored Africa. Now, if you think about Amerigo Vespucci, one of those great explorers, if you think about Magellan, who would come along, hundreds and hundreds of years after this guy. If you think about Columbus, you think about Francis Drake, you think about all these people. This guy is well before all these people. This guy is out looking, exploring, understanding what's going on. Right. So let's have a little look at a map, and this is apparently where he's going. Right. So we're out beyond the Pillars of Hercules, where the red line starts. We're looking at about the Canaries. Now, the interesting thing about this is that it's long said the Canaries wasn't discovered until about the 1500s. Well, that can't be the case. So you got the island of Kern there. You got Cape Verde there. So you got Kern, and he's going all the way to the Cameroons, Mount Cameroon, and then he's heading back north again. So what we know about him, he was an explorer. He was a discoverer. He was a colonist, right? Like every other person who goes out to sea, right? Columbus. When we talk about Christopher Columbus, 1492, we always talk about Christopher Columbus as this great guy who goes out exploring, right? But that's completely false. He's going out exploring and he's colonizing at the same time, at the root of a sword. So now this is something that we actually see a lot. I read a lot of stories like this, and I don't know how much of this is true. There's actually Chinese explorers way back in the time, and what you usually see about Chinese explorers is they're going out with massive fleets of hundreds and hundreds of vessels, and nobody comes back. Those types of stories. And if they don't come back, that type of thing. So Hanno, Hanno, two N's, is said to have set sail with 60 vessels, holding 30,000 men and women, which is quite a lot, to be honest. That's got to be exaggerated. So what we're doing, he's heading out, and then what he's doing is, as he's exploring, he's dropping people off on the way to establish cities and towns. So apparently he establishes 5 cities, Carthaginian cities, by the way. He's out there. And interesting enough, what we do have is at Kern, for example, there's archaeological evidence saying that he did actually get to Kern, because there's evidence of Punic remains, Carthaginian remains at Kern. And when you look at the maps, when we did the Carthaginian Empire and the Carthaginian world, it never showed any of this, right? It never showed it. So the Carthaginian Empire was much bigger than what we've seen, what we've understood. so obviously, he's heading along this coast. Kern, he's heading much further south, apparently to the Senegalese, setting up trading posts. And all of this, all that we know about Cameroon and all of these things, is that he's exploring this coastline. There are loads of exciting things to be said about this. And we did know he returned, but obviously, probably returned with about two or three boats, and a couple of things to show for it. Now, it's said that there's an account of his voyage, that's written, in the stone at the Temple of Baal at Carthage, right? But then, whatever was left was transcribed into a Greek manuscript, called the Periplus of Hanno, or Hannon, Hannon, which claims to be an ancient Greek translation from the Punic inscription. However, some historians would say that they actually doubt whether Hanno actually did any exploring at all, whether he actually got further than the gates of Hercules, right? So this is again one of those things, we don't want this individual to have achieved as much as could be said. So yeah, I just wanted to bring you Hanno. I just wanted to give you an idea of this person before we get into the great Phoenician, the great sort of Carthaginian stroke Greek explorer, Pythias. And then just a little bit of final information about our friend Hanno, right? And obviously him going out exploring. Is that it's then said that some historians is actually saying, it's more likely they set out with 5,000 individuals and not 30,000 on a similar number of vessels, right? So to get an idea of this sort of big achievement, Hanno's big achievement, he's set out. And he's gone on a journey of nearly 5,000 kilometers, right? 3,000 miles along the African coast. Now, if it does turn out that this is in fact, all of this in fact did actually happen, right? Then this would be one of the greatest explorers to ever live. However, it's also argued that the ancient Egyptians, about 700 years before this individual, managed to circumnavigate Africa as well. So there's a lot to be said with this, and it's sort of saying ships with square sails without a stern rudder might navigate south, but the winds and currents throughout the year would complicate or prevent the return trip to Senegal, to Morocco. So then they're talking about oared ships might be able to achieve this feat, being able to go south and being able to go north. So oared vessels like the triremes that we see in the history books. But it's likely it was a coastal exploration rather than going anywhere inland into the depths of Cameroon, and not sort of do anything else than just sort of get an idea. But we do actually have the sense of colonies being established along the Sahara coastline. And then the final thing about the Canary Islands, thinking about the Canary Islands, it says that ancient geographers were aware of the archipelago, right? But they didn't know much about anything further south. So I just wanted to give you Hanno. I just wanted to chuck him in there as something extra, something to sort of get your teeth into. So what we're going to do now, we're going to look at the Plesner resistance, which I've talked about for a few weeks. There is again, look at this. Look at all of this, and we're thinking, right, okay, what's going on? Not the Venerable Bede. And we're talking about the circumnavigation of the British Isles. Pythias. Pytheas. Pythias in Britain. Now, whoever gets the credit for this, let's just give it to the Greeks. I mentioned, bit of Carthage in there, Phoenician. This explorer, a Greek geographer, an explorer by the name of Pytheas of Massalia. And where is Massalia? Modern day Marseille. Massalia is the Greek colony of Marseille, right? So they undertook a voyage of exploration to northwestern Europe, and we're talking about. We mentioned about Cassidaries the other week, and sort of thinking that there's something out there, right? But this is it says around 325 BC, right? So bit specific there. And in the process, he became the first scholar to note details about the people up north. The Gauls, the in brackets Celts, the Britons, the Germanic tribes. And if he's going into Denmark, right, past the Denmark Straits, that's where your best amber's going to come from, right, which puts you in places like Königsberg, places you back into where the old East Prussia was, right? Then this all sort of makes a little bit of sense. So again, that's a nicer map. It sort of it paints it a little bit better, doesn't it? So his voyage took him from the Pillars of Hercules, the modern Straits of Gibraltar, along the Atlantic coast of Spain and France. Again, it's showing on the map that he went across the sort of Bay of Biscay, but it's likely that he would have just hugged along the coast, right? If he's going to hug along the coast, it means that he's going to be safer, and he's going to be able to trade with people. He's going to able to get water on board. If you go along the Bay of Biscay like that, not knowing where you're going, that just doesn't make sense. Or you go across the Bay of Biscay because he's got a map that somebody done earlier on. You see what I did there? So it's unlikely he went across the Bay of Biscay unless he already knew from somebody previously who had done this before 325 BC. So at least some of those he mentioned, some of those places that he mentioned, like the people of Orkney, the Carnarvon people of Cornwall, all of these things being mentioned. And he's mentioning the Armorica, he's mentioning Brittany, he's mentioning the people of the Armorica, where he noted various Celtic tribes. At least some of those he mentioned can be linked to tribes which were also present in the region during the conquest of Julius Caesar in the 50s years BC, right? And obviously Julius Caesar comes over to Britain. So this fascinating thing, Pythias, and during his trip, he visited the British Isles before finally making his way to Scandinavia, noting various tribes there, and perhaps being the first man to note the tribe Thule, a far northern location in classical European literature and cartography, the place of Thule, Thule. Now, Thule, as you can tell on the map, is Iceland. Now, if Thule, the thing is, he may have actually visited Shetland, and this is the point. The original name for Shetland was Thule, but then again, the original name was probably Iceland, right? And this is the point. When we talk, the first people to ever discover Iceland was actually the Vikings. Maybe he discovered it, right? So this is all really interesting. Or we should be saying the first people who actually settled Iceland were actually the Vikings, but it was discovered before that. So this is the thing that is really, really important when we think about Pythias, and we think about his journeying, right? And then in my mind, I thought about this earlier on. I thought about Atlantis. I've thought about Atlantis a couple of times whilst I've been talking about this tonight. And I thought, well, why can't, for example, Atlantis have existed in the Atlantic? People went out there, people knew its existence, right? And other what I'm actually going to do, right, is I'm going to slip on to something from Wikipedia a minute, because there's I forgot this was actually on there. So we're just gonna because I've got those notes there, but I've also got this. And if we do that, Pytheas, and we've got there, and we go back. There's loads of maps about this. Loads of people have done stuff about this. And 1 second, there we go. Let's just get these images up there. Right, yeah, this. So what we've got, we've got these writings. We've got this sort of we know about his sort of lots of people have written about this. Pytheas of Marseille. That's what it says. Pytheas of Marseille. That's what that basically said. And this is actually a copy of the Roman writer Strabo's manuscript from the 900s. Right, so Strabo lived earlier on. This is that. Lots of the documents that we do have are copies of copies of copies. So naturally, inaccuracies have been copied from the past. And but one of the things that we've got. Hang on, there we go. Hang on, there. This is Strabo writing about our friend. Strabo is writing in his Geographica in the years just before Jesus Christ and after, and he's writing in that, and he's mentioning this Greek explorer called Pytheas, right? And it's really important that he's mentioning this. So when does the link come in with Britain? How does that come in with all of this, right? And again, it's this. And there's loads of illustrations of this. And this is apparently a map of Britain, right? And the one thing that would be familiar there is Caledonia, right? You've got Caledonia in the middle. Albion. Well, there is one problem with this map, is that it's written down by Strabo, which is after the years which is after the years that we know about these tribes from Julius Caesar and all the rest of it, and this is copied and be changed and altered, right? But if we've got anything like this from Pytheas, right? If he was able to put anything like a map like this together, it's very significant, right? Very significant. So his time within the vicinity of the British Isles produced various interesting points. Apparently, he travelled extensively through the Isles, right? So he wandered around all the islands and in the inlets and stuff, making notes of what he saw, and also provided what may be the earliest written report of Stonehenge. So, although the sources that are written down, although all the stuff that we've got is copies of copies of copies, and people have actually probably added stuff to it, right? It's also mentioning Caliva, as in Caliva Atrebatum, right? But there is one problem with this map, right? The name Silures, the Demetae, are names given to these people well before Pytheas, right? So this is sort of a representation of an idealistic world, and the original map that was written down and inscribed by Pytheas has long since changed and been altered. So if we go back to Baldric and we go back to here, and we try to make a little bit more sense of this. Where are we? Good. There. We could do the blue one. See, these show two things. He circumnavigated Britain, and then he didn't, or then he did. Really depends. So again, this is one of the many routes. So you can get an idea that he first of all makes land in Cornwall, apparently, right? And if you go with the other map, right, he's actually gone up the coastline, just as the Spanish Armada did, right? Whereas this map, if he took this route, um, you know, when we explain what I'm just about to explain, right, and how it's done. So what we've got is that when you get to the likes of Kent, and when you get to the likes of um, the English Channel, right? Apparently, he named the promontory, the big promontory that sticks out in the sea there, right? As Canti Cantion, which is the land of the Cantai, which is modern day Kent, right? Kent, Cantai, Cantion. Is that a name that he gave it, or is it a name that people gave him? All these really interesting questions. And then later on, maybe what happened is that the Romans thought, oh, right, but we do know that the people there did all actually call themselves the Cantai. We know that from their own coins. So, and there's also he must have sailed past Cornwall, right? Because we've got the Cornish coastline there, so the Convoy, right? So we know about that. The promontory of Belerion, the land of the Convoy, right? What's really, really interesting with this whole thing for me, right, is that he's got a name for Orkney, which is the Orcus, right? Or the orcas swimming in the sea, but the Orcus, the Orkneys, right? Where is he getting that name from? It's really, really interesting thinking about that. So to ascertain these names, he must have visited each location and probably many others besides. And there's another point with this, right? There is another point with the whole thing, right? If he didn't visit these localities, other explorers must have, and they gave him the information. So therefore, there were explorers going out visiting Britain anyway. You can't make these things up because they're there. Roman historians are writing about his work before the Romans actually come over here, and then the stuff is then copied and changed and altered. But then that goes into history, right? So to ascertain these names, he must have visited each location and probably many others beside. So Belerion, he recorded, was home to a civilized people who were especially hospitable to strangers, apparently due to their dealings with foreign merchants who were involved in the tin trade. Belerion, Cornwall. Peter would have loved that. Peter would have loved me saying, apparently due to their dealings with foreign merchants who were involved in the tin trade, and these were hospitable to strangers. Peter would have loved that one. So Belerion, Cornwall, Convoy, modern day Cornwall, the land of the Convoy. All right, so that's really, really interesting. And we've got the idea of tin and trade, but there is one other thing that we're missing with all of this, right? Pytheas is said to have been the first person to circumnavigate Britain. We've also spoken extensively, haven't we? We know this. We've spoken extensively about people from Spain trading with the likes of Ireland. We've mentioned in the context of Cyprus, people are coming from Cyprus out into the open waters, getting tin from places, taking it back to Cyprus, mixing that tin with the copper on Cyprus. That's where we're getting the name Cyprus from. Kypros, copper, Cyprus. Job done. So again, I think this is more about somebody actually circumnavigating Britain, recording it, rather than who were the first people to actually visit people in Cornwall, which were obviously 1,000 years before Pytheas. But the issue is who is actually writing this down, and it's not Bronze Age people. Who is actually circumnavigating Britain? It's not the Bronze Age people. It's the Pytheas, where we get that story actually written down.
How do you spell the name, Carl?
Pytheas, Pyth, Pyth,
Is it B?
and then it's EAS, Pytheas.
Is it BY
Piper.
for Brian? B for Brian.
No, P. Oh, balls! I'm going to write it down. Pytheas, P.
Pytheas.
Oh, let me write it down, my dear.
Pythias.
Ah,
Right.
right.
And then there's an E. Pythias, Pytheas. There you go. Go on, Drina. What would you call that?
Pythias.
Pythias, yeah.
This is
I'm just doing it phonetically. Anyway, Pythias, Pytheas,
Yes, yeah.
whatever. There he is. Anyway, Rog, have you got it? Good.
thank you.
Actually, on that note, right? We'll go on for a little bit longer, right? And then what we will do, we will have a little bit of a break, and we will.
Oh, I'll cup of tea then, you guys. Yeah, good.
Yeah. Thanks, Rog. You know, I really appreciate you. You know, your interruptions. You know, the grass is going to grow beneath my feet.
Well, just thoughts, passing thoughts.
Rog, shut up. Right. The point is, when we look at a map like this and we think, right, this is in Strabo's book, right? This is created from some of the stuff that was written down by Pytheas, right? Pythias, whatever, by Pytheas, right? This map is put together by some of the stuff that Pytheas. This is in Strabo's publication, right? But what Strabo has done, he's added stuff to it, right? And then what's happened is that when the Romans discover Britain, and they invade Britain. No, the Romans don't discover Britain; they invade Britain. The Romans, more stuff is added to this map. So by the time you get this being published in the medieval period, what the original map of Pytheas actually looked like is really difficult to say, right? All these place names and stuff in this book attributed to Pytheas is not right? But it just gives you an idea. And there's one thing about this is this is actually a pretty fairly accurate map of Britain, you know, in a way that you've got Cornwall sticking out there, you've got the sort of long, scrawny bit of Scotland, even though it's like distorted, it sort of gives you an idea of this very odd landscape that our explorer is actually visiting. You know, there's loads of different versions of it, you know, and this is, again, the circumnavigation of Britain is what we're really interested in. So on that note, what we will do, we will take a break. Roger can chill out and, you know, just sort of
Have a nice cup of tea.
Have a nice cup of tea, right? And then we're going to start on the Roman historians, and we're going to just sort of discuss the Roman historians a little bit, right? And then we'll do more about them next week, right? Because it's sort of really impossible to go through the list of 200 Roman historians that I've looked at and try to break them down, which I'm having to do because it would just be too much. Right. Okay. So let's see if there are any questions. Drina with the red hair.
Oh.
It seems strange that the maps you showed us with the tracks of the ships didn't touch Britain at all. Some of them, one of them did.
No, they didn't. But then he's over here and he's able to record all this stuff down, which is odd. Yeah. When you go on the internet, it's the same thing. You know, it should have been like he sailed into he sailed into a little bit of the Scilly Isles, and then he sort of Penzance, and then sort of you go over to say Plymouth, and sort of you go and that way. You know, there's that's not on there, and you're right.
Would you have seen it? I don't know what distance you can see.
No, to try and get this detail and information, you're not going to. And the other thing as well is he's not going to be sailing in deep water. He's going to be in a coastal hugger.
Yeah,
he's going to be along the coast. He's not going to be in deep water because if you're in constant deep water, then you get the perils of the sea. No, he's going to be along the coast. And when it's stormy, he can go into a little bit of an inlet, and he could just keep hugging the coast and sort of getting water and and all the supplies.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And maybe avoiding Brighton because the women are a bit strange there. Roger knows all about women from Brighton. Roger, tell us about women from. No, Roger, anything you want to say?
But Jill's opera of Brighton.
See, I told you she was old.
Wild.
She's wild.
Mm-hmm.
Not right. Okay. Yeah, go on, Raj.
No, that's it. Not anymore. I haven't been to Brighton for years. Been to West Sussex and all that, and round and up down here. But no, interesting coast area, or full of history.
Well, do you want a medal, Rog, that you haven't been there for a while?
Yes.
Oh, that's good.
Nice.
Yeah, Rog. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get Andy to make you one now. Yeah.
Okay.
Andy, get a brick, right? Drill a hole through it and put a cord through it. And we'll hang around his neck. Right, Andy. Anything you want to say?
No, I've read about Pythias or Pythias, whatever his name was, a while ago, and it's an interesting read because there's a lot of information in there that is, and the argument, of course, is the same one. Either he went there and saw it for himself, or he spoke to somebody who did, but it's all accurate.
Yes.
So even looking at Strabo's map, you know, one of those other maps showed him going up the North Sea and up to, you know, Iceland and all the rest of it. But on Strabo's map is the Isle of Man, and you wouldn't have known that was there unless you'd come through the Irish Sea. So somebody had to come through the Irish Sea to have mapped that. But whether that was Roman or not, I don't know. But
yeah, but that is the point. You know, we can. There's a few things. There's a lot more that we can talk about with this, and we will, right? And we'll put that in there.
Yeah, the book I read generally accepted that he probably did make the voyage right up to Orkney at least. So,
and there is one thing about all this. We've got the King's historian John Leyland, in the 1540s. So John Leyland, there's a lot of inaccuracies in John Leyland's work, i.e. He says, oh, there's a building there, and somebody says, well, actually the building was over there, right? But John Leyland's on a boat, he's half blind, right? And then somebody's saying, oh, there's a church over there, and he's getting somebody to write down there's a church over there on this coast, right? And you know, so even though John Leyland did the sailing journey along the coast in the 1540s, right, the King's historian, he didn't accurately get everything in the right place. He obviously, you know, he recorded everything, but it wasn't necessarily in the right place, right? Yeah. But Pythias seems to have got things correct.
Yeah. Well,
which is difficult to do.
Yes, it is, without actually seeing them. I agree.
He could have said the Isle of Man was over by Kent, but he didn't.
Yeah. But also there's is that there has to be an original somewhere as well for the story to be there. Now, whether that was word of mouth and somebody else copied it, I don't know, but there's definitely an original. And the fact that it is quite accurate would suggest that has been referred to on lots of occasions. So I can't remember where the original story came from, but.
And we'll talk a little bit about that. We got some of that stuff there anyway. Okay. So right, so anything from you, David?
No, thank you.
Margaret?
I did read in one of these many Roman books here that the Greeks had been there first, but I didn't know the name of the Pythias. It showed a broken line going from Caledonia up to Iceland. Does that mean they're not sure that they went
Totally.
that
The,
far?
the thing is, it could be 6 of one and 5 of another. It could be like, right, you managed to get to Orkney, right? And then somebody said, actually, there's several days journey over there. There's this place called Thule. Thule actually sounds Scandinavian, right? It's not Thule. So um, somebody basically said, oh, if you go in that direction, right? And he thought, oh, right, okay. So it's slightly off the setting sun thingamajig, over there. And he thought, oh, right, I can't be bothered to go over there. We'll write this down, we'll record it, and we'll just tell people that we went there. Julius Caesar did the same thing, you know. Um, you know, you know, Now I'm not going to say we've all done it, right? But it's like, I've done things, and to keep people happy. They said, "Oh, did you go so and so? And did you go somewhere?" And I thought, "Oh yeah, I did. It was really great fun because I can explain it because I spoke to somebody, but it doesn't mean to say I went there."
Ah. Well, it was quite a feat, wasn't it, back then, to do a voyage like that?
Exactly. So what we're going to do, we still going to do Agricola tonight and Tacitus and look at some of these historians. So Pythias, we're going to do. I want to, as I said, 9:20 finish tonight. So we've got 1 hour. So 10-minute break. It's we'll be back at 8:30.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, and a few people away today because you upset them all last week, Margaret.
Oh, I do that.
Yeah. It happened.
Yeah, it happens. Get over it, I would.
Oh.
Turn it, Rog.
Oh.
For
Roger,
all these cultures that expanded around, particularly the Mediterranean, they have to have been explorers to have expanded, because they have to have, gone a bit further and a bit further and a bit further each time.
Yeah.
It goes without saying, doesn't it? So, I'd never heard of Hanno, though. Never heard of him at all.
Well, now you do, and
Yeah.
he's a massive
Yeah.
historian, and it's a bit like some of these Arabic explorers. We don't know much about them, but it's I'm gonna have to, I'll have a little break in a minute. One of the things that really torments me is the fall of Constantinople, Andy. I get I get very bothered by the chain of events. Obviously they say, oh, that when Mehmed the Great captured the city, they defiled all the churches and all these things, and everyone went into slavery. But when you actually start to read what happened, right, you actually start to work out that lots of the churches were not defiled.
Correct.
The great mosque, the great mosque, okay, the great cathedral was spared, right, which become the great mosque. That was spared. It was nothing occurred to it. And then you actually read about what happened to the royal family of the last. Lots of them were actually the Mehmed basically said, right. I'll give you a little city over there in a town as long as you convert to Islam, right? You can rule for me, and that's what happened.
Well, was it the patriarch of the Orthodox Church is still there. He's still the last Holy Roman Emperor. That's his title. He's still. I think he lives on an island off Istanbul now because for security reasons, but in a compound. But there is still one even today, and that has been continuous. So they didn't wipe them out at all. They were much more civilized than that.
Yeah, but this is the thing. We go by the written word, and I was doing a little thing about this, and then I had all these people saying, "Oh, but you're a Muslim lover, you're this, you're obviously a Muslim," and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, right? I'm just saying it.
Yeah,
I'm just
the history there. Read it. Yeah,
exactly. Right, I can have a little break, so I'll see you in a little while.
Pudding time.
If Emma and her dad come up, I
Mhm.
think they're meant to be coming next Wednesday. I think it depends.
They're on
how...
Caldy Island today. That's why they're not here. And Judith on a bender.
Oh. If they do make it, it depends how her dad is, really. He's not a
Yeah.
very well man.
Yeah.
Would you and Drina like to come up and meet them in the evening?
Yes, if I can, I would. Yes, that would be nice. And
Okay.
I can give them a hand with the books as well, loading the car up.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that next week?
That's,
Yeah.
I think they said next Wednesday.
Yeah. No, I'm not here.
Oh,
I'm doing a
Drina.
course on book restoration.
Ooh,
Are
well, it's
you
no
going
good.
to Higham Hall?
Yeah.
We haven't got any more books now. They've all gone. They'll have all gone by the time.
I went round it was the Levens Art Trail
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
last weekend.
good?
I had, yes, it was, blimey, there's some talented people.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was the
Been on that
lady
one.
who does bookbinding.
Yes.
She was,
Helen. Yeah.
do you know her?
Yeah. She
But
was
there
the
was,
one I had my first lessons with.
right.
Ooh.
Yeah, she does, who did she say? She does work for some of the museums, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But there was a man on Church Road who makes musical instruments, the most beautiful harps, violins, guitars, unbelievable.
There used to
Stunning.
be a guy in Levens who made beautiful harpsichords.
Well, maybe this is
in,
him.
no, I think he's dead, long gone. But there was one or two in Levens Hall that were made by him as well. They were wonderful, wonderful instruments.
Well, these were just staggering.
Davis, he was called, somebody Davis, because I remember his daughter was at school with us.
I don't know what his name was, but and he makes very unusual instruments. He was making some kind of Swedish harp thing, and he and his wife go over to Sweden a lot, and they do this special Swedish country dancing, and they use these instruments that he makes.
Wow.
Oh, well, you just don't know what goes on behind.
And this is all in Levens. Yeah.
In Levens.
Wow, I didn't even know there was an art trail in Levens. I'd like to see that.
Yeah,
try and get it next year.
It was very good.
Yeah.
A lot of one really good artist that lived right down at the far end at Cinderbarrow in a lovely big farmhouse. He was celebrating his 80th birthday, but his artwork was staggering.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And I went to the quilting exhibition in Endmore.
Oh, yes, I went to that one.
It was beautiful, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely amazing too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so quite a good arty weekend. It's nice that they do things like that.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
And I sold, because we had our Silverdale art exhibition
Oh, yeah.
and before, and they put me in charge of refreshments. We decided to have refreshments, and they said, well, Margaret used to have a tea shop, so she organised it.
Oh.
So I thought, for the table decorations, instead of flowers, I got these little canvases on easels from the works. They're only £2 each.
Yeah. I've got a few of them.
I said, I'm going to do famous artists, works by famous artists, and put them on each table.
Oh, fantastic.
Right.
So I did a Van Gogh, flowers.
Yeah.
I did a Claude Monet, magpie on a fence. I did a Lowry and a Matisse.
Wow.
Oh,
well done.
On these little, I'll show you one.
Oh, yes, do. Fantastic.
Somebody said, oh, I want to buy the Van Gogh. So I sold it for £10.
Oh, nice one.
Which is quite good for a Van Gogh, isn't it?
That's very good value, yeah. I'm hoping you didn't sign it, Van Gogh.
So this is Matisse. Can you see it?
Yeah.
For heaven's sake.
Oh, that's nice.
Wow.
Yeah,
Matisse
nice
the
picture.
cat.
Yeah.
And this is
Got the light.
Claude Monet,
Got the light right on that as well.
magpie on a fence.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they went down a treat. And when I suggested doing those, they poo-pooed the idea.
Of
Did
course.
the
Yeah.
others?
Well, they would,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they said, "Oh no, just get flowers." So I thought, no, I'll
No
just
imagination.
Yeah.
bit different. But I'm
Mhm.
thinking now I might just do these miniatures because I quite like them.
Yeah.
Yeah, just of
Great
local
stuff.
scenes.
Yeah.
That can be my thing.
Yeah.
You can, and you can also learn a lot from copying good pictures as
You
well.
can.
Yeah.
I mean, you got the light in that the Monet one really nicely. So
Claude Monet.
yeah.
Well, I was just looking for artists that did very simple things. I mean, by no means could I ever do a Rembrandt, but
Well, maybe next year, not yet.
but I enjoyed
They're more
doing
interesting
Matisse.
anyway.
The
Yeah.
view through the Mediterranean ones are really
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We have to do a Cézanne next time then.
I'll do a Cézanne.
Yeah. They're
Yeah,
nice and dynamic.
Maori I'm not keen on. I did one,
No.
but I wasn't very pleased with that. And I did think, oh, I could do the Picasso with the funny wonky face.
Yeah.
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 But they're really difficult to do. They look as
They
if
are.
they would be
Yes.
simple.
I copied one as an exercise when I was at art college, and it was actually really hard work. And funnily enough, I got the sex of it wrong because I just was given the picture, no title, didn't know what it was. And it was one of his like kind of cubist portrait things.
Yeah,
And it had a big phallus on one side. So I assumed it was a male, but it wasn't. It was a female. It
yeah.
had cleavage in fairness, but I'm thinking, well, why has it got a big phallus on the other side of it?
Oh, golly.
I think he was confused.
Yes, yes. But just imagine if the end of the world was nigh and everything was destroyed, but all that was left was a painting, that painting by him, and aliens came down and found that. They would assume that that's what we look like, wouldn't they?
Yeah, definitely.
And that's what archaeology is really, isn't it? A lot of assumptions.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would they think of
Right.
Carl Andre's pile of bricks then?
Oh, not much.
Oh, that's been going for like nearly 100 years now, hasn't it? That one. So, you know, they carefully number them so that they're put back in exactly the same place.
The same place,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. You think it's a pile of bricks. That's the whole point, you know.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. I never did get Tracy Emmett and her unmade bed.
No, did she?
She did one with a tent with all the names of the people she'd shagged as well, didn't she?
Yeah, but he paid £1 million.
Yeah.
Didn't he?
It's you're getting into that conceptual side of things where it's more about the event than the actual piece itself, although you do get a piece with that. So
yeah, bizarre.
yeah, one of the nicer ones of that Turner Prize was that Rachel Whitebread, who she concreted the inside of a terraced house and then knocked the house down. So you had the imprint of the space inside. It was brilliant. Nobody had ever done anything like it before. And it was really weird seeing a house defined by the space rather than the walls.
Yeah.
And it was great. And they demolished it a few years ago. Yeah, there's such imaginative people out there, aren't there? Yeah.
Which I'm not one of them, unfortunately. I can only paint what I know and what I can see.
That's what they did. That's
exactly yes, in a way.
When you go to the places where they painted, you know, even like Salvador Dali, technically an extraordinary painter. You look at his early works, he's tried all the different other styles and been brilliant at those.
Yeah.
He got into his surrealist stuff. You're thinking, where'd you get these ideas from? And then you go to where he lived, and the mountains are those shapes. And you're thinking, oh, that's where he's got the idea from. Same with Gaudi. A lot of his stuff is very influenced by the.
Will they ever finish that cathedral?
Yeah, it's very nearly finished now.
Is it?
Yeah. I was really upset years ago when I realised that I would never see it finished because they'd stopped at that point. and it was miles off. And then they got a new government came in, and they decided we're going to finish it, and they've ploughed ahead. It's not the same as the work he did.
No.
It's different. Karen describes it as being having no soul, which is rather sad for a church. It's the shape's there and it's going to be complete, but it doesn't have that organic life that the work he did. Or well, he didn't do it, did he? Somebody else did it. He just drew it.
Yeah, but there are other designs that appears in Barcelona, aren't there?
There are a lot,
Quite
yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, very unusual.
I always feel sorry for the other architects and designers in Barcelona, because it has like a arts and crafts code. They call it something else there, but and there's some beautiful buildings and designs and furniture and interiors that would stand out by themselves.
Yeah.
Except Gaudi's there and just like
he's got the name, hasn't he?
wipes everybody off the face.
Yeah. I do like Salvador Dali's work.
Yeah, it's quite vivid.
Very
Quite vivid.
Yeah.
He was a great technician, wasn't he?
He was, yes.
Yeah.
I like people who see things from a different perspective. Question
do it well, but do
and
it
question things. You make you think about it. You know, wow,
yeah,
I hadn't thought about that. That's great. You
what
know,
does it need?
Like the flexible clock, the rubber clock.
Yeah.
That one hanging on the branch.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, that's just weird.
You wouldn't see it's always a flat clock, but with that he broke that image.
Yeah.
I want to see some of Drina's quilts. I believe she's fantastic. So Anne says she says they're amazing.
Well, she would say that.
Well, I bet they are. You worked very hard on them for a long time.
Oh yeah, well, I like doing it. I like the design. I like doing this design. Mind you, when I do them, I sort of design it as I go along. You start with one idea and then it develops into something else. I love that.
I'd like to come and see them.
Oh, you're welcome.
Everything I've seen when we were around there has been great. So I'm sure it will. No, I'm not just saying that, Drina, because you're there. I'm saying it because it's true.
She hides a light under a bushel, does Drina?
Oh, yeah.
So what I need is to find somebody to do me some Iron Age Roman clothing. Well done, Drina. You volunteered for it.
Drina could do that. Definitely.
Has anyone ever seen this? This is a bib gone.
Yeah, I've seen.
Yeah, it's basically this is made of yew wood, and these are horns, and this is a present that I got from Germany. This cost about 350 quid. It was handmade, and bibgorns are actually a traditional British instrument, but the only people who are actually making these things now are on the continent.
Oh, no, know that.
How does it work? I can't see how that works.
But basically, it's got you play it like this.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
It's like a recorder.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I'm not getting any sound out of it. Obviously, Michelle's the one. I can't get anything.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but that's basically, you were talking about instruments earlier on, and this is an instrument that goes back about 1,000 years at least.
Wow.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Perhaps you've got to kind of spit through it. Some of you spit, don't you?
Yeah. The thing is that I can actually play a bugle, but yeah, I just.
So look it up on the website somewhere. How to play a bugle.
Yeah, no, Michelle can play it.
Oh.
Some used to play it in our folk groups.
Yeah, exactly. Michelle knows how to play it. Anyway, let's crack on.
Crack on then.
We got a few things that we still need to do, boys and girls. Right. Okay. So let's get on to the images. And screen. There. And let's sort of get back to these maps. Gently understand what we're doing. So, right. So there's three last bits that I want to do today. It's to Pythias, Pythias to look a little bit more finely at this, to mention one of the Roman historians and mention a little bit of a list, and that should take us up to 9:20. So, a name was coined for the British Isles and the Britannic Isles. Piper, Britannic, Prettanic, the Britannic Isles. Although the spelling varies thanks to the translation from his original Greek, whether he coined this name himself or more likely gained it from the inhabitants is unknown. Did the people of a part of Britain call themselves the Britannic people? Now, the point is with this is that nobody in Britain would have called themselves the same name. So say, for example, nobody in Cornwall would have called themselves the same name as somebody in Scotland, right? But maybe Britannic is a pretentious name that was gained from somewhere, right? So later sources recorded the name Alba, right, meaning white. Now we saw that on the map of Strabo, right? Hang on a minute. Not straight. Well, hang on a minute. Where it was clear. It was clear on another map. Where is it? No, hang on. We did actually see the map and it was clear. Yeah, Alba. There it is. Albion, right? Old Albion. Now that's Scotland, right? There's a political party which was set up by Alex Salmond, who's no longer with us, sadly. He set up the party of Alba, which was another name for Scotland. But in this context, it's saying Albion, Alba, is another name for Britain, right? Or the British Isles. Now, this is another thing. Can you see that there? Strabo, there's the name Britannica, which is used for Ireland. But again, this is done by Strabo, and this is a copy of a copy of a copy years after Strabo, and then years after Awathen Pythias. But the name that we might think of for Ireland is Eri, E-R-E, which means west, Erin, Island, right? So Erin, E-R-I-N, Erin, Island. So these Britannic Isles, there's lots of islands here. On the other hand, refers not to the islands, but to the people. These are the Britannic people, and that would.
What?
Hello?
He's gone.
He's gone.
Where's he gone?
He just disappeared.
Oh.
Oh,
What?
Oh, back again.
we lost you.
Hang on, I was still here.
Nope.
Oh,
That's
no,
what
you
happened.
weren't.
It was Roger's fault. Roger.
Oh, Roger.
I was just about to say when we're talking about Pythias and we're talking about maybe the reference to these people of the islands was the Britannic people, like these are the Celts in mainland Europe, or these are the Gauls, right? These are the Britannics, right? Now that's really interesting because in the Welsh language, Siarad Cymraeg, we have Cymro means men of Cymru. Cymru being the place, Cymrais means women of Wales. Cymru with a Y is reference to the area, right? Cymraeg is associated with more the product or yeah, the being, and Cymraeg is the language, right? So you could think about this thing Britannic referring to the people of all these isles. This is the thing. So the entirety of the people. However, when you think about all of this, when you try to understand what's going on and remember all of this is being added to and changed and altered way after the years that our friend Pytheas has circumnavigated these lands, 325 years BC. So happens to be a Roman historian, sort of copying his work and sort of using it. So Britannic, and how this is, Britannic may actually be a name that comes from very early on that becomes Britannic. Britannic becoming Britannic. So so that's really interesting. So if that's the case, the name Britannia was not a name that the Romans gave the land of Britain. It was a name that is a very old name that maybe the people of Britain called themselves. We don't know. We don't really know that. Anyway, going on a little bit to try and understand, what's going on with our friend from Marseille, right? Let's just try and understand a little bit more about. So the journey, the journey itself. Why was there a journey, right? And this is, circumstances of the voyage. So when we actually go back to the original map, why is this happening? Why do they need to go up there, right? Why is it that he needs to go out from the Pillars of Hercules? And it might be Pytheas is going out, right? Because he's fleeing from Marseille. Because remember, this is the time that there are lots of weird things going on in the Mediterranean. There's not just the Greeks, there's the Romans, there's the Carthaginians. It might be that he's spurred to leave. And that could be the reason why he goes out there. There's a specific reason. There's an exodus of people leaving Marseille, and he happens to be an explorer, and he decides to go into the Atlantic Ocean, past Pillars of Hercules. So there's also it's said that Pytheas is actually the one who discovers amber, right? The amber trade, right? How much of that is true or not? But it would have been a very powerful money thing. So we're obviously going all the way past the Straits of Denmark, and we're doing the trade there. So the final bit about this circumnavigation of Britain is really interesting. So it does go back to the work of Strabo, that historian, around the birth of Christ. And so Strabo reported that Pytheas said he traveled over the whole of Britain that was accessible, right? He traveled over the whole of Britain. Well, is that circumnavigation? What is that? So because there are scant first-hand sources available regarding our explorers' journeys, historians have looked at the etymology for clues about the route. So, what can we learn from the wordings and the stuff that was eventually handed down to Strabo hundreds of years later and then written down? So Pytheas, basically in Pytheas's work, we do believe he said he environed the whole perimeter of Britain. In other words, he circumnavigated it, right? And so what we could say is that the whole journey, right, from beginning to end, not just the coastline of Britain, was 4,500 miles, which was a longer journey than Hanno, right? So that journey must have taken him past the Straits of Denmark, and maybe that actually did take him to Thule, which is Iceland, right? There's another Roman historian called Didorius Siculus, hence why we've got to do these historians. And all of these, the one thing about these historians is that they're learned historians, they're trusted historians. Didorius Siculus is a trusted historian. Pliny is a trusted historian. Pliny is the one who's witnessing in AD 79 the likes of Vesuvius erupting, and he's writing this down, right? So these historians are to be trusted, right? There's a point to this. We're going by the written word, but again, Andy's point is that for this stuff to be written down, it must have come from somewhere. And it's saying that Pliny's saying that the complete journey for Pytheas is 4,875 Roman miles, right? So it's there are some other points to be made about what these historians are writing about, right? And they're looking at they're looking and understanding, how to understand the journey time and how to really understand everything that's going on, right? Some historians are saying that this complete journey time, right? The navigation of 4,830 miles is not the full journey, is actually it only refers to the coast of Britain, right? If that's true, he must have gone through a lot of inlets and down a lot of rivers. Another person's actually saying if the full distance of the navigation of Britain, that the figures that we're given, 4,830, is only, the historians are only writing about the coast of Britain and not the full length of the journey, that is a hell of a lot more than 4,830 miles, right? One historian in the modern age has actually come up with another figure, right? It said that if you visit every single inlet along the coast of Britain, every single bay, every single inlet of the coast of Britain, that is a massive 7,723 miles. You go up and down every single inlet, every single island, which is a big distance, right? Now, it's said by another Roman historian, Didorius Siculus, right, based on Pytheas's work, right, that the time that Pytheas took to circumnavigate Britain alone was just under 43 days that it took to circumnavigate the entire of the British coastline, right? Does that include Ireland? So the problem is, what we're left with is not really completely understanding the journey that our circumnavigation actually took place. But it's really exciting to think that people are actually talking about this. But if we think if we think about this as well, how much of this is accurate and whatever, right? If we look at a few other things, so we're looking that he visited the three corners of Britain, Belerion, which is Cornwall, Cantillon, which is Kent, and Orca, which is the straits between the mainland and the Orkney Islands. And it's basically coming up with some really weird and strange these figures of thousands of miles sounds to me as if they've been exaggerated, right? To do those thousands of miles, the vessel that you're sailing in must go really fast, right? That's another point. Now, back to something else. Didorius, the Roman historian, is writing, right, that the main reason why Pytheas is out there exploring is because of the tin ingots. He's wanting to understand how how to get access to a really decent supply of tin. And it said, for example, that he may not have needed to go to Cornwall to get tin, right? This is a really interesting thing. He could have gone to the River Rhone instead, right? Where there, and the River Rhone is, as you know, in France, but if you go into the heart of Germany, right, there is tin in Germany. And there's loads of people saying loads of different things about this journey, and it's based upon a lot of hearsay, right? Now, if I'm gonna chuck something really interesting in, right? That the likes of Strabo says about Pythias, and he says about Thule. So concerning the people of Thule, Strabo says of Pythias, right? But grudgingly. Now, this is really, really interesting, right? And I think this is the point that Andy was making. Um, the Romans would not have been aware of Iceland. We've got no records to say that the Romans ever went to Iceland. So how did the Roman historian Strabo describe Iceland if it wasn't from the work of Pythias? It's said as follows about Thule, which is Iceland. He might possibly seem to have made adequate use of the facts as regards the people who live close to the frozen zone. When he says that, the people live on millet and other herbs, and on fruits and nut and roots. And where there are grain and honey, the people get their beverage also from them. As for the grain, he says, since they have no pure sunshine, interesting fact, they pound it out in large storehouses. After first gathering in the ears hither, for the threshing floors become useless because of this lack of sunshine and because of the rains. So there's a good description, and maybe he did actually go to Iceland. And there's also talk. Strabo writes about something really, really odd, right? Now, this is really interesting. Strabo writes about the work of Pythias. He says Pythias also spoke of the waters around Thule and of those places where land properly speaks no longer exists, nor sea nor air, but a mixture of these things, like a marine lung, in which it was said that earth and water and all things are in suspension, as if this is something was a link between all these elements on which one can neither walk nor sail. So basically, he's describing ice. So to be able to describe ice, there's no ice in the seas around Orkney. I've been there enough to know that, right? So and then finally this last thing about Pythias. We could go on all night about Pythias and loads of stuff. We're talking about Pliny the Elder. Pliny the Elder's writing in the AD 70s, right? So this is basically 400 years after this journey, right? 325 BC. So Pliny the Elder's writing sometime in about AD 70, right? 9 years before his death, because he's trying to save people at Pompeii and Herculaneum because of the explosion on the 24th of August of Vesuvius. So it's said that Pythias speaks of an estuary of the ocean named Muntunius, which is Denmark, and extending for 750 miles, the shores of which are inhabited by a Germanic tribe. Right. So this is basically the Baltic, right? From here, it is a day's sail to the island of Arbalus, to which he states amber is carried in springs by currents, being an excretion consistent of solidified brine. He adds the inhabitants of the region use it as fuel instead of wood and sell it to neighboring Teutons. The Teutons are people of Poland. His belief is shared by another historian. It's really interesting that amber is being mentioned. And then there's talk of another journey down the River Don that takes Pythias into a completely different world. So this guy is a great explorer, and all the miles being sailed, and all that information, gleams the fact that there was a journey well before Rome. There was a journey of somebody who was going to the Baltic. There was a journey that probably circumnavigated the coast of Britain. For all these facts to come together to Strabo, when he's writing this work around the time of the birth of Christ, it's really interesting that we've got all this information. So what we're going to do, we're going to move from somewhere else now, right? We're going to move on from Strabo, and the question, right? There's a catch with this. There's a really big catch, right? Who was the first British-born historian? Obviously, it's the Venerable Bede. An English Benedictine monk is widely considered the first British-born historian. His most famous work, The Ecclesiastical History of the English People, written in Latin, is a foundation text for understanding the early history of England. So in other words, there were no Roman historians that were born in Britain. Or is that true? There's the Venerable Bede. And then we think, well, the Venerable Bede is writing all this stuff about Britain. And, he was born in the kingdom of Northumbria, right? There we go, around 673 years AD. And he died at the age of 61, 62 in AD 735. And I just thought this was really strange, because I thought this can't be the only historian that's born in Britain, right? That's actually writing about Britain. This is way out of the Roman world. And then it was this guy, Agricola, right? Now, Agricola is a very interesting figure, because we've got this guy, Agricola. He spends most of his life in Britain, right? So technically, the first Roman historian, brackets, born in Britain, was Gnaeus Julius Agricola. He was actually born in France in AD 40, but he spent most of his life in Britain. So, and he's writing, and then his life and his work in Britain is then written about by Tacitus, right? So while not technically born within the geographical boundaries of Roman Britain, he became a prominent Roman general and governor of Britain. And his son-in-law Tacitus wrote a biography of him, which is a valuable historical source. And that's actually a really good place to actually start to unravel these historians, to sort of unravel this information, to sort of get to grips with these historians, right? So to not go into a massive amount of detail about Agricola, but we'll do a little bit now. Agricola, we've got the life, the vitae, the Dea Vitae, Moribus Julia Agricola. The vitae means life of. So when you get a vitae of Caddoc, it means the life of Saint Caddoc or whatever. But so the vitae, Vita, the life of Agricola. So technically, he's a historian. He's somebody who's very influential that somebody else writes about. So the Roman writer writes about Agricola, and this work is written in AD 98. And the work recounts the life of his father-in-law, Gnaeus Julius Agricola. Now, Agricola's name is to be seen a lot when we're looking at Roman era Britain. The Agricola supposed campaigns in Ireland, Agricola's campaigns in Scotland, all of these really important things. He was not only a general, but he was actually a governor, right? So he was serving in Britain between 77 and AD 84. It also covers the geography and ethnography of ancient Britain. So the first information that we've got really written down, which is reliable, is by Tacitus in AD 98. We do have Julius Caesar before this. We have other historians before this, including Strabo, right, which we've just been mentioning. But it's in. But one of the reasons why I wanted to start to talk about these historians is because they're so important. Because that's where we get lots of the information from to understand the Roman world in Britain. Now, this is if you look on the list on the left, right, you've got a number of historians. You've got Livy. We've mentioned Livy on the list there. We've mentioned Tacitus on the list. Julius Caesar, a big historian. Lots of these other ones, like Josephus, Sallust, are names that we haven't come across yet. Plutarch, we've mentioned Plutarch. Herodotus, that he's a Greek. Lots of these are in the Roman world mainly. Herodotus clearly isn't because he's Greek. Lots of these are actually going to be Greek historians. But you've got Polybus, who we've mentioned, Didorius, and Dio are on that list. And it basically on the right there, it sort of says, you know, they're writing about various different things within the Roman world. So I think the one that maybe stands out on this list above all of them, for now, is not the likes of Strabo. The one that really stands out in this list is Herodotus, right? The historian Herodotus. Now, the historian Herodotus lives way before Rome really started to upset people. So Herodotus is writing in about the 420s BC, right? Herodotus tells us about the he starts to tell us about little histories in the Mediterranean. He starts to tell us about the seven wonders of the ancient world, and this is a really interesting historian, but he comes from a Greek perspective. And when last week it was like, oh, Carl, were there any Carthaginian historians? I said, yeah, there were two Carthaginian historians. And then what we then did was we come across the explorer Hanno. Now, actually, there is a really good list on the internet, and you can actually, and sometimes Wikipedia is really useful for this, right? So, and you can all tap into this because this might be helpful for next week actually. So if we type in list of historians, right, and hopefully, is that the list that I've got there? List of, I think it's
Roman historians.
this one here, right? I think it's this one, right? Yeah, this is so. What you've got here, you've got a list of these historians, which is really useful, and again, reiterating what I've just said, it's important to realise that even though we've got lots of archaeological remains, some of the information for what's going on in Roman era Britain only comes from historians, right? So I'm going to spit it out as it is, and it's really painful for me to say this, but 99.9% of the information that we have of Julius Caesar's invasion in Britain comes from Julius Caesar. In regards to archaeological evidence, probably we've got 0.1% archaeological evidence in Britain to say that Julius Caesar had the invasions, right? And the other thing as well is, and this is a really powerful point, if all the work of Julius Caesar was destroyed after Julius Caesar's death, right, it might be possible that we may not have known that Julius Caesar ever invaded Britain in the first place, right? And this then takes me to the likes of Claudius. Emperor Claudius, right? So Emperor Claudius becomes emperor in AD 41, right? On the death of Caligula. Now, the records of Caligula were destroyed, and that included any record to say that Caligula ever invaded Britain, right? So again, we are relying upon these historians, right, for information, but some of the information is not readily available because again, if the work of Julius Caesar had actually been destroyed, right, what would we know about Roman era Britain? There's one name that actually the one name that actually does take us on a little journey is the Roman writer Livy. This Roman historian called Livy. Now, Livy is the one that we thank for the information last week, because it was Livy who wrote a monumental history of Rome in a book that he called A Burbe Condita, which means from the founding of the city. I always say from the founding city of Rome, right? So it's Livy writing the history of Rome. However, when we were talking about the foundation of the city of Rome last week, there was a bit of tongue in cheek about it. How much of the story about the foundation of the city of Rome is actually genuine, right? Because the big history of Rome was written by Livy, right? Which is approximately over 700 odd years after the foundation of the city of Rome in 753 BC. Now, lots of Roman historians had to be really, really careful with what they wrote about, and sometimes some of the historians would actually be punished for the things that they were actually saying. Now, there is, if you look at our friend, right, and there he is. We've just mentioned Tacitus, haven't we? And the C is pronounced K, Tacitus. So this again, lots of these historians, politicians, as well. So when you're talking about ancient Rome, in many ways they've got a political agenda when they're writing about Rome. Now, if we think about if we think about lots of these, one of the historians that we come across a lot is this one, Dio Cassius. Now, Dio Cassius is a really interesting figure, right? And the reason why Dio Cassius is a really interesting figure, I can sometimes be talking about a something that's happened in Britain, and i.e., Dio Cassius might say that Boudicca did X, Y, and Z in AD 60 or AD 61. But you can clearly see that Cassius Dio was living between 165 to AD 235. So Dio Cassius's birth was 100 years after the existence of Boudicca, right? And the death of Boudicca, right? The death of Boudicca, right? So the point is, what we are doing is we're relying on these historians for the information to tell us about what was going on in the Roman world. Now, this is another thing. Lots of these historians, only bits of their books have survived. So many of the books of the likes of Cassius Dio, many of his books, as it says in the text, have survived intact alongside summaries edited by other authors. But not all of these historians, not all of these historians' books have actually survived. And, there's quite a long list of them, and there's another one, that Appian. We've mentioned Appian a few times. If we keep the list up there, I can go out of this, and I've got my thing on the screen. As I say, you you're not really going to get any better than this if you're referring to these these historians. And the other thing as well is lots of what we know from about the Roman emperors is written by these historians. So, for example, Appian he's born in AD 95. He dies at the age of 70. He's actually a Greek historian writing in the Roman world. Now, this is another problem. He's a Greek, but he's Roman, right? What we mean by that is because he's now living in the Roman Empire, this Greek is classed as a Roman, right? So although he's born in Greece, he's Roman, right? That's another important point. He's a Roman citizen. And this individual, he's actually born in Alexandria, right? He's a Greek born in Alexandria in ancient Egypt. And what we have, he ends up in Rome, right? He's got a senior office in Rome, involving money, right? And basically Appian is writing a history of Rome, right? A series of monographs, a history of Rome. And it's rather interesting to think that when we talk about these historians, when we were talking about Carthage, I would say Appian saying something about and Livy saying something about the likes of Hannibal, and that they're not saying the same thing. So it's really difficult to get the true story of what's going on. Hang on, if we go back to there, we keep the list on there. If we take somebody like Plutarch, and we'll look a little bit more detail, a little bit more of this next week. And again, this is another one. Plutarch's a really interesting one. He's a Greek. He's a philosopher. He's a historian. He's a biographer. And he's a priest. He's a priest at the temple of Apollo in Delphi, right? This is Plutarch, right? And he's writing lives of various Romans and Greeks. And he's definitely a Greek through and through. And he's studying maths and philosophy, right? And so again, and what we also know, we've got, if we click on Plutarch, right, what we've got is lots of how these people look. We've got statues to them. We've got busts. So this again, this is actually created basically in the lifetime of our friend Plutarch himself. So we know exactly what he looked like. A portrait of the philosopher in the Delphi Archaeological Museum. So we know what these people look like. They were heroes in their own time. And the point is that how did they publish their work? Basically, their work was either written to scrolls or parchments. Some of these would be written into sort of textbooks for people to read. But again, what we do find is that, again, this list of historians, and as the historians start to go later and later and later, right? Again, they're writing various histories about this world that we're all fascinated with. And so again, we'll be looking a little bit about this next week. It's now starting to get to 20 past 9. But before we go there, we'll just mention this one, Cato the Elder. again, Cato the Elder, way before the birth of Christ, 234 to 149 BC. Cato the Elder was a soldier. He's a senator. He's a historian. He's a conservative and opposition to Hellenism. He's not really into the Greeks, right? He writes a history in Latin, and basically a fragmentary work on the history of Rome. So not all of it has survived, which is a bit of a shame. And also, look at that. He's writing a book on agriculture, rituals, recipes, various prose in the Latin language, and again, lots of these people feed into an interesting idea and world of ancient Rome. And there's Cato. He's got a big long nose, right? And he was 85 when he died, right? And that's interesting. Don't think in the Roman world that people died in their 30s and their 40s. There are Romans that lived up to 100 years old. I kid you not, they did exist. This Roman historian lived to the age of 85 years old. But unfortunately, many Roman emperors didn't actually get to their 40th birthday because things happened to them. So what we are going to do is that if any of you guys want to do a little bit of research, and this is the guy that we will be doing next week. So we'll address Gnaeus, Julius Caesar. And again, the work of Julius Caesar is really, really important because it tells us about his campaigns. It tells us about the Gallic campaign. There he is, beautiful bust there. It tells us about his campaign in Britain. It tells us about the Civil War. He's writing the history, right? But obviously, he's not going to be writing the history of the day that he's stabbed. On that note, hopefully we've all got something out of this today. It's a shame that Anne wasn't here tonight. It's a shame that Judith wasn't here tonight, or Emma, all the likes of Richard, David. But hopefully you've all got something out of that tonight. And let's see if there's any questions. Gina.
No, thank you. It was really good. Thank you.
Andy, I'm still wondering why you didn't interrupt when I was talking about Pythias, and I was talking about his journey of 4,000 miles, 7,000 miles. It seemed to get very confusing because loads of people have got different ways. But if you were to take a stab at a guess, what's the complete circumference of the British Isles if you went down every single inlet? What would be the circumference to you?
Oh, I would think it's more than that. I would think it's probably more like 11, even maybe 15,000 miles because there's so many. But even if you look at Morecambe Bay, it would be easy to sail across it and not go into it. So, it's a very random number. He might not have had enough wind to get up there or whatever. Or I don't know. He may have missed one because he didn't see it. So one estuary. Weather
or it was misty or whatever.
He just didn't exactly. Yeah. So I don't think it's fair to say just because it was only so many thousand miles he didn't go around Britain, because it's only 700 miles from one end to another in a straight line-ish, which you can't actually do. But so it depends on where you go, doesn't it? So. Yeah. And one thing I did want to ask about as well is that I find it very interesting, this naming people and groups of people and towns. If you've built a house and you've got a few mates together and someone else comes along, you don't really. I mean, we name things today and we say we're British or whatever, but that's because we've got a global concept to the place. I mean, they may well have been aware of the globe, but I'm not quite sure when names started to become the thing. or groups of people decided that they were called something rather than, well, we just live. My family name, for instance, can translate to people on the side of the White Hill. Now that makes sense, that might, if it's true, that might be where people have come from. But why they would name themselves, the Cornish or whatever, just saying, picking on the first one that springs to mind. I mean, maybe they did call themselves Cornish, but I can't. Would they? I don't know. I find that
No,
really,
they wouldn't.
I don't think they would. No, I think
No.
when people come up, if they sailed up the estuary, where do you come from? It would be over there. Because why would you call your village a name? When you live there. So there is no need to have a name. So
actually, yeah, I got to interrupt you. I'm not going to apologise for interrupting because your point is really valid. Because I live on a hill, right? The village has got a name, right? But I wouldn't say that we call ourselves anything up here. We're a group of people who live on a hill. There's a neighbour there. There's a neighbour there. There's a neighbour there. We're there. There, right? So, yeah, you've got a very good point because, what do we call ourselves?
I mean, if you're visiting somebody, you bump into somebody, you'd say, "Is there a town or a village there?" Yeah, there's one over there. That's all you'd say. Yeah.
But because this also the group that is tonight, right? You can call us what you like, but we're a group of people who come together to do archaeology, right?
Yeah.
We don't necessarily need a name.
No. I can understand if you're like, let's take the Romans, for instance, building an empire, and you want to refer to a place or a group of people that is causing you problems. You need to give them a name. You can't just say that group's playing up again.
Which one? There's
bloody hundreds of them.
Yeah.
And then there perhaps is a need for a name. But
is it anything to do with travelling to places?
Yes.
You've got to know where you're going.
A, B, C, and D.
Well, you don't have to know where you're going, do you? You can just go because you enjoy traveling and find what you get. You get there.
Yeah.
But the problem is when you get back to relate it to someone, if you do go back, where have you been?
Yeah.
Over there.
It only comes about when writing started, really, doesn't it?
Oh, that's an idea. Yeah.
And actually, all of this has got a good point, right? If you've got somebody come into your village and they've got these things, right? We know that person's going to come to the village next week. We don't need to know where they come from, right? If and the other thing as well is, by the way, we can get gold over there, right?
Yeah.
And we can get copper over there, or the people from over there are going to come here. Why do we need names? And the other thing as well is, if you remember, lots of people in the past didn't travel. Roger knows this. Lots of people in the past in Wales didn't travel more than 5 miles out of their area, right? There's talk, and this is most people in the South Wales valleys, right, would never leave the valley in their entire life.
No,
right?
They had no need to, did they? So.
And there's no need to, and that's not a joke. They've got their chapel, they've got their farm, they've got their mine, they've got their family around them, right? They why do they need to go anywhere?
Yeah.
Well, that was true up until modern transport, wasn't it? Really.
Well, it is and it isn't, because we've just been talking about Piraeus or Pythias, Pythias.
They were unusual.
Well, were they? I don't know. We were just Carl and I were just talking when you were at the beginning of the break that for all these kind of great cultures, easy to spot around the Mediterranean, for them to become great, they all had to travel. They all had to expand and to go and find new places to go to. And when they'd gone somewhere, somebody had set something up there and they traded with whatever. So people have to travel to trade. It might only be to the next town. And you get a chain reaction, but some of them clearly went a lot further,
Yeah.
It's
The
like you're talking
planning
about,
they had to do for those voyages.
yeah, I mean, the Canaries,
Yeah.
they talk about them not being discovered to, late medieval or whatever. I've seen what I would call Neolithic pottery. I would categorize it very crude pottery on the island by some ruins. So I would say there were people there thousands of years ago.
Well, how old were those mummies that they found in, was it Tenerife?
Yeah.
But we know that lots of them are from the Gouache mummies are from the 1500s. But but
how did they get there?
Yeah.
We know they came from genetics say they came from North Africa, but it's you can see it just in the distance on a good day, but it's still a long way to go in the so-called dugout canoes that they allegedly are. They've got to have had bigger boats. They've got to be so therefore people were exploring.
And one of
they were shipwrecked.
A vessel that's been shipwrecked on the coast. Yeah.
Shipwrecked on the Canaries. Wouldn't that be terrible? Yeah.
It could be worse, couldn't it?
Well, we won't go there. Right. Okay, then. Anything else from you, Andy?
No. I found that whole
really interesting.
Thing. Yeah, particularly with the Romans writing, and you're thinking, were they really called the Briganti, or is that just what they called them? They were called the Hulus. Really.
The Britannic people, Britannic. But the thing is,
Britannia is a really interesting word, isn't it? Or Britannia or whatever.
But it could be in a small group of people in sort of off the on a little island from Colchester. Do you know what I mean? It's
or it could have been some guy standing on a promontory and he comes over saying, "What's it called in Greek?" and him not understanding and going saying, "Go away," but the word for go away was Britannic. Britannic.
That's what they said about kangaroos, isn't it?
Yeah.
They said, "What is it? It's a kangaroo," and it meant I've no idea.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
A jumping no idea. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, they are. Nobody knows. Yeah, exactly.
That's how people get confused, isn't it?
Exactly.
The Britannic thing's an interesting one. I love it when you can get past known influences like the Romans because they've influenced so much with their writing.
Yeah.
So, right. No, it's fine. David, anything you want to say?
No, thank you. Good night, you all.
Hi,
David.
No, David. No. I didn't want David to go because it felt a bit lonely with him gone. Right. Okay then. My God. No. Oh no. What? Pat? Where's Pat? No, I've got one.
Pat gone Wednesday.
No, Pat's gone back to Wednesday, hasn't she? Yeah, that's right.
Tomorrow. Tomorrow, worry.
A body.
Tomorrow. Right. Okay then. Margaret, anything you want to say, lovely?
Well, I'm going to read about Pamphile of Epidaurus. Pamphile of Epidaurus, who I noticed on your list of writers was the only female writer.
Oh yes, I noticed that.
And she was of Egyptian origin, but she lived in Greece, and she was wrote during the time of Nero.
Mm-hmm.
Oh right.
So I'm going to read what she's got to say.
Wow.
Interesting. I think you should. I think you need to tell us all about that next week.
Yeah, absolutely. She was at there were just two female writers, her and somebody called Banzhao, which doesn't sound Greek or Roman or Egyptian.
Banzhao. Hey, we want to know about that. We do. We really do. We do.
But I've got in your collection, I've got Suetonius. Look.
Oh wow.
Yeah, well, you got to be reading that. We expect you to tell us all about Suetonius next
12
week.
Caesars, which should be good.
Is that out of our library?
By Robert Graves.
Right.
Oh, well, there you go. Robert Graves, God.
He lived
Hi, Claudius, eat your heart out. Right. Anyway, thanks for that. Okay. Here we go. Look at that.
Haunting.
Spooky.
You're with me, Gina. I can feel your presence. Roger, talking about you being with me, Roger, feeling your presence, right?
You
Anything
can't
from
say
you, Roger?
things like that.
Well, it's just the
Look,
thing.
hang on a minute. Me and Roger are men of the world. If he wants to steal
She
me,
just said
he can
about
steal me.
travelling.
What's
Knowing
that,
where to
Rog?
go. If I popped up to see Margaret, she's no point saying the third hill on the left near the trees. What the heck's that? So you need to say the land of Andy.
Hang
Say,
on, that's what she did with me, and I found her out.
oh well, you've got different ways. I'm not cheeky. I'm quiet.
Yes, if you're going to
But you
try and
need
find
a-
somewhere
a
precise, you're
pinpoint.
right. Yeah.
You know, the land of something, which is so many leagues up or something, to start
3
pointing
nights,
to
3
northwest
days
south,
sail. Yeah.
then an area, then a group of people somewhere, some
Yeah,
group.
but
It's got to be
Andy's
no
point
label.
is, Andy's point is that the concept of place and ownership and landscape is not the same throughout history, right? And that is a good point, right? So, you know, is it you're passing through? Do you really need to know where you are if you're passing through? You don't, and that's another point. That is another good
Well,
point. These
it's only
historians are
unreal.
going from A to B. Do they really? Did they? You know, these travelers. Do they really need to know all this information?
No.
You know.
Don't
I'm
know.
glad they logged it down.
The instructions they got for
There's a famous quotation.
or the area or somewhere. It gives a general direction to confirm what they were told.
If you want to reproduce
something
it,
at distance, it's difficult to get there.
But you can't legitimize it without having a description, can you?
No.
To
Well,
other
it's
people.
when
They
they
call
called
something.
Britain the Tin
You know,
Islands, didn't they?
identifying to me.
Yeah.
We were the
Know where
Tin
you are
Islands.
and get you there, or selecting the right article in your box of stuff. Pick the one label so and so. Otherwise, pick the rusty bolt when there are 10 of them. You think, well, which one? You've got to pinpoint something.
Oh,
Label,
right. Yeah.
identify.
Yeah.
It's too vague just to say up north, near the land of the Cumbers. It's just too vague.
3 days sail to the land of apples. Yes.
Yeah, or something.
Yeah.
And they're all rotten on the tree. Well, that's a lot of bloody good, Andy.
Land of sheep. Well, that'll get you far in Wales, isn't it?
Yeah, you're perhaps taking this too literally. Might not have meant.
I'm going to have direction pinpointing. I say, like Trina was saying something. How to know it to travel.
Mm.
Otherwise, as you say, it wouldn't matter if you live in the valley, say, to know where anything is. You know, Gloucester or something. So what?
When you look at a present day map of Scotland, which still is in the countryside, in the Highlands there, they just, on their maps, they just name a post office or a station.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's how it would have been back in the day, wouldn't it, when the population was very small?
Well, hang on a minute. There's something you missed, right? In West Wales, right? Within a circumference of like 10 miles, there's like 4 places called New Inn, right? And it's like, and you go in through it and say, hang on a minute, I've only just passed through that place. It's the same name, right? And it's just a thing. So hang on a minute, right? That's the problem with place names.
Yeah.
Some place names are exactly the same as other place names. And it's just like, so how does that help?
As soon as you can read.
Yeah,
So-
around here we've got a couple of trout becks, haven't we? And a couple of Staveleys.
But we came across an issue with Silverdale. There was somebody had looked up the tide table, and it did say Silverdale, and it was miles out because it wasn't Silverdale in the UK. It was Silverdale in America. So I looked up.
my God.
I looked up, and there were 9 different Silverdales, of which 7 were on the coast. One was in Australia. So, yeah.
And don't buy a train ticket going to Barry. You might end up in Scotland. Which isn't a bad idea, actually. Yeah.
No, we don't go to Barry.
Yeah, go to the one in Scotland, Rog.
Yeah. So there we are. I think it follows what the others are saying. You've got to pinpoint something for travelling.
Yes.
Just to say, well, I live here, I've never been anywhere else but Gloucester. So what? You don't know exactly where it is. What they do there, or something special to do with something on the river or something. But not the same directions as having to get there.
Mm.
which I used to as a kid because my family came from there. So
Shipping names like bosun, coxswain, they're all Anglo-Saxon names, apparently.
are they?
Yeah.
But there's only one cockermouth.
Oh, I
Well,
bet. Oh, I bet there's more than one.
No, nobody else wants it. And aspidastra. Oh no, I can't.
Aspatria.
Yeah,
Expatriate.
well, yeah, you only want one of them. I've
Yeah.
only been there once. So I'm not going there again.
No, they're a bit funny up there, those places, aren't they?
And Wigton. Oh my God, Wigton's the home of the British Nationalist Party still.
That's
well,
where Melvin Bragg was born.
Yeah. They're all Maras up there, as they're called.
Mara.
Maras. Yeah, it's mate. It means mate. Mara.
Friend.
They would say, "How is the Mara?" You know. So,
how
are you, Mara?
Thing. I thought
No, that's working to Whitehaven, but it may there's trade links, so there may well be connection with it, but yeah.
That's what they say around here. What's the matter?
Mm.
So the answer was a vegetable. What's the matter?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you ever use the word mithered or mithered?
Mithered.
Hang on a minute, we're Welsh.
No, I wouldn't know.
I love these old words. You just wonder where they come from.
Mithered.
Yeah, my mum used to say
and missile.
Mithered to death.
Missile's another one up here, isn't it? So, Missile meaning like wet air, like you're in a cloud.
Yes.
Called missile. Yeah.
Missile.
Yeah. I bet a lot of them are Viking. We're very
Viking. Yeah.
It's interesting with language because when I took Welsh, studied Welsh, you think you see one against the other, then it gets you thinking about other things. I studied French as well. And you see how people are describing things and how one has influenced the other. And English has been the best one for pinching other people's stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a good idea. If there's a name for something over there, why invent it?
Yeah.
Oh, look, there's a... Oh, that's called a tree. Is it? A what? Tree. Oh, I'll use that then. Funny name.
And they called Iceland Thule before the Scandinavian island was a language was ever invented. Thule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a bit confusing, that one, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
I got some genes in me for Iceland and Scandinavia. Iceland and Scandinavia, really. And Denmark dance from the old days in France, I suppose, was still. But you get all this stuff. It's interesting, but language is quite interesting, how it works and how people express things.
The good old days.
Well, language, it changes all the time.
Of course it does. That's right.
I mean, they say when the weather's awful now, it's pants. The weather's pants.
Yeah.
Knickers. Oh.
That's
Roger, I told you not to be crude.
that comes from the Simpsons, doesn't it? Pants.
When
they think it's being rude. Say to somebody, "Your pants." Oh, don't be so personal.
I don't want to see your pants, Rog.
Well, that's it. People be saying, "Oh, look at him. He's really terrible. Talking about pants." Oh,
yeah, you are terrible. I don't want to see your pants. End off.
It depends where you are, doesn't it? Because pants in America means your trousers. So.
And a funny thing in America was we were there visiting in Texas, and my wife had a say carefully now, a bag around the waist, the money bag.
A bum bag,
yeah.
Bum bag.
She left it on the table somewhere, and the host guy, he said, "Hey, Anne, you left your fanny bag on."
Yeah.
So I had a quite weird bill.
No, I don't know how they got that name.
For the other.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Bum bag. Oh,
well, we don't have sidewalks. We have pavements, don't we?
Doesn't come into it, I don't think. They don't use the word.
Yes, and they have a razor.
At the same time, just taking up English. What was on about the rear part of the station? So she said, "We will. I will meet you at the backside of the station." It's just crazy how language is molded into things. And
Yeah.
another woman said from Denmark, she's got steps in her tights. And
Got
Jim
what?
said, "What steps? I got
Steps in her
the
tights.
Steps in the
What do you
time.
mean ladders?
Ladders.
Yeah.
Ladders.
Ladders.
Yeah, it's got lost in the translation, hasn't it? Yeah.
It is, and,
Or maybe they were just bigger.
strange. That's how things develop, and accents come into it, and dialects.
Yeah.
Like your area around this way, certain words you wouldn't understand if somebody said something.
Yeah.
The same with idioms. It's what I learned. Well, certain things are said which have nothing to do with what the words seem to relate to.
Mm.
Yeah.
Somebody's thought of a saying, all the intelligentsia, one and the other, and it's adopted to keep it like Shakespeare and all, and you have to learn about it. So
Yeah.
that's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's when you get the same word in Welsh with ysgol meaning ladder, meaning school.
Yes, exactly.
But then you work out that school is a bit like a ladder, right?
Yeah,
because you progress.
Yeah, similar idea. And then you got certain words up and down South and North Wales that use for different things. So when you
Like
say the
now.
one word down here, it's talking about one thing and you can't find it because it's talking about someone else. Lots of examples of that, even in a small country.
Well, they do that. They do that in English. Just like we call a circular thing in a road a roundabout. Over in Lincolnshire, it's called a circle. So
really?
yeah, because I went first time I went over there, I go around the circle, and I thought, oh, do they mean the circular road around the town?
No,
Yeah.
roundabout.
And I thought, and I
Well,
said,
yeah, that's an Americanism, roundabout.
is it?
Yeah, painfully, yes.
But then you've got localized, like Cockneys call glasses bins.
Yeah.
And you wonder why.
Yeah.
Why?
No, exactly. Weird one.
Binoculars.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cockney Rhymes time's got some relationship usually to stuff. Yeah.
Usually.
Well, my mother-in-law's best friend was a lady called Ruby Murray, who was an Irish singer back in the 1950s.
Are you joking, really?
And when I told my son, we've got a photograph of them, and I said, "Oh, that lady's Ruby Murray." He said, "You're joking." He said, "That's rhyming slang for a curry." They call it a Ruby Murray is a curry.
I've
heard it called a ruby.
A ruby, well, that's a Ruby Murray curry.
Going for a ruby, but no, I never know. I did because I could never understand that one. That makes sense.
Ruby Murray curry.
Yeah.
It's like London rhyming slang, Cockney rhyming slang.
Well, the apples and pears. Yeah, I mean, what? Why don't you just say stairs?
Yes.
You had that other one. There's a back slang as well, which is really peculiar.
Oh yes, we used to use that.
And they actually talk backwards. So
well, it lives on with Danny Dyer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What we used to do was go to a word, to the first vowel, put that front bit at the end.
Right.
And you think, what? And put an A on it. You think, what the heck? But you get into it, especially in school times. It's a fun.
Yeah.
Carl, do you know what time it is?
Yeah, it's 10:15.
Yeah, nearly Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, famous last words.
Yeah.
Right. All right, then. Should we call it a night?
Yes. You're wandering around the woods. Okay. Have you?
Yeah, I'm gonna pop into the woods now. Yeah, it's still actually it doesn't look light in here, but it's still light outside. So it's fine.
Still light here. Yeah. You'll be all right for a bit. Yeah,
it's fine. Fine.
No, that's pants.
And I go fiddle with the sheep.
Yeah. I don't think you can say that. You're still on YouTube.
Yeah, just be careful.
You can light a fire there, it's safe spot.
I did a video of me kissing a sheep earlier on. I wonder if there's any comments about it.
Oh,
spreading your love.
I was actually spread eagle on the sheep because it was like I needed to keep it down while I did his hooves.
Right.
Oh.
How many sheep do you have now?
21.
Ooh.
Are you getting rid of some?
Oh no, some are getting old and stuff.
Do shoot them then, yeah.
Are they just like your pets?
Well, they've all got the thing is, because they're a rare breed, we can't exactly, they're not like a normal breed, because they're our rare breed is the only one in this part of Wales, so it's there's not many flocks, so.
What sales cause, chance of selling them. Well,
And did you say they have hair rather than a fleece? Or-
No, that's the no, Baldric, my turkey, actually has hair and feathers.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got hair and feathers, and no, they've no, half of my sheep you shear, and the other half you roo. So you pick, when you roo them, you pluck the wool off them rather than shear them.
Right.
Oh, right.
shear it
And
off.
I got to try some of the freshly plucked has got lots of lanolin in it, and it's perfect for skin conditions apparently. If anyone wants any to try any.
Good.
Yeah.
Very good.
So
Unless you're allergic to lanolin.
Yeah. Well.
oh,
Yeah,
shut up, Andy.
my
It's quite a common allergy.
Yeah.
Lanolin alert. It gives you, it gets eczema, can flare up eczema quite badly. So
Yeah, my
Mm.
daughter's
If you've already got
allergic.
eczema, then yeah.
Don't use it. Okay then. Thanks,
All right
Carl.
then.
Yeah.
Thank you
Gonna
very
make a note
much.
now and,
yeah. Good night, all.
And then
Thank you very
say
much.
something,
Okay,
get
well,
rid of
I'll see you all next week. Thanks for joining us. See you on
Yeah.
Tuesday, and yes,
Look at
two and a
the
half
story.
hours later. No,
Yeah.
2 hours 50 minutes later. Right, Drina, Roger, Margaret, Andy. It's been a blast. That was great, and I'll see you next week. Take care.
Thanks,
Okay,
Dave.
thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Night, night, guys.
Yeah.
Night, night, night,
Bye.
night, 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 guys. Night,
Is that?
night, Rog. Supposed to finish 30 minutes ago. I gotta start. I gotta go in a little Pengai when I'm setting up a little few stones, and that's when I'm starting my Roman thing. A bit like our Swedish bloke. I'm gonna start developing my Roman costume, and I can be sat by the fire with the fire.
Yeah, be careful because we've never had a fire in them before, have we?
It's in the middle, and it's only gonna be wood.
Not by the oak tree.
No, I've cleared it now. I've been clearing it. You've been over there. Anyway, I haven't fed. I didn't feed the animals at all.
We're gonna have to leave them now because it's too late.
I was hoping you'd wake up.
You should have woke me up before you started teaching.
I thought you were gonna wake up. Right, okay. Okay. Oh, nothing on there. 1, 2, 3, 4, nothing there. 5, 6, 7. Nothing on that chat window 3. Where's Andy's comment? Nothing on that chat. Nothing on that chat. Nothing on that chat. Chat. Nothing on that chat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nothing on that chat. 8, 9, 10. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, Nostar, thanks for watching tonight, and don't forget to like and subscribe.